What are the top 10 things you need to know and do for your marriage-based green card interview case? Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States, out of our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, Washington, D.C., and Chicago, Illinois. How are you doing today? We're going to talk about marriage-based green cards. I have a lot of people who call into the Immigration Answer Show and ask me, hey, Jim, I'm in a countdown. My interview's in about 2 or 3 days. Maybe it's 1 day. And I want to get ready. What are the things that I need to be thinking about? So I made this video. We're going to do a countdown of the 10 most important things you need to think about and or do before or during your marriage-based green card interview. I've been practicing immigration law since 2008. I've been to hundreds of marriage-based green card interviews, and people in our firm have done many, many more than that. We have pooled together all of our knowledge, all of our information, everything we know about marriage-based green card interviews, and we're putting it all into this video for you for free. Why are we doing this? Because we want you to win. We want you to succeed. We want you to do a good job and to get that green card. It has never been harder to get a marriage-based green card. The fact is that the Trump administration, Stephen Miller, and everybody at the Department of Homeland Security has declared war on immigrants, and that has even seeped into the marriage-based green card context. While there are certainly officers who will give you a fair shake, there are many more who are looking at this time as a real opportunity to find fraud where there isn't, to delay cases, and to get cases denied because of some reason they don't like the couple sitting in front of them. So this video is going to get you ready for the tough task of getting your marriage-based green card case approved after interview. So let's get to it. Number 10, you and your spouse should be practicing before the interview. Now, I don't want you to write out a script. I don't want you to memorize things. I always want you to tell the truth. But what I'm talking about is getting used to the rhythm of listening to questions and answers. Questions and answers. If you look at the I-130 and the I-485, that is what the officer is going to spend most of their time doing. They often ask the U.S. citizen many of the questions from the I-130 application itself. They read it out word for word just like it's written. So you can practice asking each other those questions out loud. Read each one. What is your address? Where do you live? Have you ever been married before? Go through and practice hearing those questions and giving your answers. And of course, give the truthful answer and give it as concisely as you can. After you're finished going over the I-130, then the immigrant is going to want to practice answering the questions on the I-45. They never ask the U.S. citizen the questions from the I-45. They only ask those questions of the immigrant. So there will be a lot of questions that they might ask a second time. And they're going to go over all those questions that might make you inadmissible. Have you ever been a prostitute? Have you ever lied to gain admission into the United States? Have you ever given any documents to any U.S. government official that were false, fraudulent, or misleading? All of those questions. Now, hopefully the majority of those answers will be no. If you have a lot of yeses, that's a whole other problem and might lead to a denial for those reasons. So if you have lots of yeses, you might think about getting an immigration attorney involved to help you. You might think about, am I really going to get this green card case? Can my case really be approved? So when it comes to practicing before your interview, again, you don't want it to sound rehearsed. You don't want it to sound memorized. You want it to be natural. But the more often you hear the questions, the better your answers, and confidence will come through. I've had people show up on the Immigration Answer Show the day before their interview, and I start quizzing them like I would if I were the immigration officer, and their answers are horrible. You wouldn't believe how much better your answers can get the more you practice. So highly recommend for tip number 10 to practice your questions and answers as much as you can. Tip number 9, avoid over-explaining. You're not there to tell your life story. You're there to answer their questions. Let them lead the conversation. Listen to the question, pause, give an answer. Listen to the question, pause, give an answer. Listen to the question, pause, and give an answer. That pause is very important. And giving a short answer is very important. If you are asked, where do you live? Don't tell them everybody about your neighborhood. Don't tell them who your neighbors are. Just tell them your address. Just answer the question that's asked. Do it as concisely as possible, and do not over-explain. Do not talk too much. Just be quiet. Actually, I hate to say it, nothing really good happens when you talk. The more you talk, it usually just leads to more problems. Stay calm, tell the truth. If they try to ask you the same question over and over, expecting you to give a different answer, if you've told the truth, stick to your answer. If you give long answers, you might sound inconsistent, you might sound nervous. You're not going to instill confidence in the officer that this is a legit marriage. Tip number 8, you need to prepare for the possibility that you and your spouse will be separated. So this is what's called a Stokes interview. Some officers always conduct a Stokes interview. They always separate the couple. They might bring in the U.S. citizen first. They might bring in the foreign national first. Regardless of whether they do it every time, you have to be ready for the possibility that they might do it during your interview. So if that happens, you're going to be ready. You're going to be well prepared to tell your story of how you met, how you fell in love, why you decided to get married, why you're applying for an immigration benefit, your relationship history, any other relationships that you've had, any other interactions with law enforcement, any interactions with USCIS. You're going to want to make sure that you and your spouse are on the same page. I often say that at a marriage-based green card interview, it's the U.S. citizen who's the star witness. I believe that USCIS thinks that an immigrant will say anything to get a green card. So if a U.S. citizen comes in confidently and is able to tell the story, they know their immigrant spouse's entire immigration history. If they've ever been in trouble with the law, they know about that. They know everything about their spouse. The marriage comes across as exuding confidence and exuding love. That's how you get it approved. And as I mentioned, you got to be ready for that Stokes interview. Tip number 7, be aware of body language. If you're slouching, if you're nervous, if you're going like this all the time, USCIS officers are trained to pick up on that. They are looking for reasons to say no. They're looking for reasons to try to unravel your marriage, to try to unravel your testimony. And so how you hold yourself, looking them in the eye, maybe shaking their hand, being very confident, standing there calmly and quietly when not being asked. You can't believe how many people just sort of fidget and jump around and act all nervous. Not good. Be confident, stand tall, sit tall, be ready. If they ask you 106 questions, you're smiling and ready for question number 107. That's how you do it. Tip number 6, review your forms. We talked about reviewing the forms as it related to getting ready for the interview itself and hearing those questions out loud, but sometimes you'll find mistakes on your forms. That's not good. So review the forms. Make sure all the information in there is correct. Sometimes people get help filling out their forms, maybe from a fake lawyer, a paralegal, a notario, or from a lawyer who just does a bad job. They put in things that are wrong. They might say you were inadmissible for some reason. They might say that you had a prior deportation order. You wouldn't believe the mistakes that people have found in those 24 hours prior to their green card interview. Here's what you do. Go on my YouTube channel, look for this word, ERRATA, errata sheet, and it's going to tell you how to make an errata sheet. The errata sheet is how you write out the answers that you should have given the first time when asked those questions. So this is like your correction sheet. An errata sheet is like a correction sheet, and you're going to want to type out any questions and answers that you got wrong on the forms the first time and hand them to the officer at the very beginning when they're asking you for your IDs. You don't want there to be any debate as to whether or not you corrected the record before being asked a question, so you give them that at the very beginning of the interview. That's why it's so important for you to review all your forms, find out if there's any mistakes, find out if there's any documents that are missing, and if you have corrections to make that errata sheet and bring it to your interview and keep a copy of it for yourself. Tip number 5, don't interrupt or talk over each other. This is a very important tip. Now, I have seen lots of situations where it seems like the immigrant is trying to coach the U.S. citizen, sometimes vice versa, but usually it seems like the immigrant is trying to jump in and answer all the questions, or jump in and be funny, or jump in and be the voice of reason. Don't jump in. Chill. Tranquilo, sit tight, be confident, trust that your spouse is going to give the right answer. Now, if they get off course, you might give them a gentle nudge. You might say, is it okay if I say something? You want to be very deferential to the officer. If the officer is asking questions of one of you, you let the officer ask those questions. Don't try to save each other. Don't try to be the big man or the big lady who's very tough. You just want to be in there answering their questions. Let your spouse answer their questions. Don't interrupt. Like I said, let the officer guide the conversation and you will be fine. It's really important to let each person answer their own questions and your confidence will shine through. Tip number 4, bring your evidence organized. Make sure that your evidence is organized. You're not going to have a lot of time to grab whatever forms they ask for. They might ask you for originals. They might ask you for your lease. You never know what they're going to ask for, and you want to be able to access it quickly. So if you come in there with a garbage bag full of documents just sort of strewn in there, that's going to come across to the officer as somebody who doesn't really care about my time or what we're doing here or anything related to that. So be very organized, be able to get your documents together and be able to hand them to the officer as quickly as possible. You don't want to be scrambling, because if you are, that gives the officer more time to think about more questions to ask you, which makes the interview longer, which makes the chances of success lower. Tip number 3, know your love story. This is a very important tip as well. you need to be able to talk about how you met and why you fell in love. Now, a lot of people these days are meeting online, and that's okay, totally understandable, but you need to start talking about when you met in the real world. So if you have a long digital history, totally fine. Make sure you talk a little bit about that, but then you're going to have to talk about the relationship. And if they say, why did you get married? You can't just say, oh, we were in love. You have to really be able to explain things. Think about if you met an old friend from high school who you haven't seen in a while. They didn't know that you were in a relationship. They didn't know that you had gotten married. You're having some coffee and they ask you, hey, how did you two meet? And how did you fall in love? How did you get engaged? These are all fair game questions. These are all things that will come up in interviews. These are all things that we've seen immigrants screw up at their interviews. So you really both need to be able to tell the story. We have a lot of people who get hung up on where did you get engaged? When did you buy the ring? Where did the engagement happen? Who celebrated with you? People get those details wrong a lot. Again, not a memory test. It's okay to not get every question right. It's not like we want you to have all of your answers memorized. We want your answers to be short and succinct, and we want your story to be a real one, and it wants to sound believable. If you say we met at the mall, I was 2 years out of status, and we got married 3 months later, that's fundamentally different than we met in college. We were sweethearts all through college. I was on an F1. She was a U.S. citizen. We decided to get married. We got engaged. A year later, we got married. We had a big wedding. You see the difference between the two? That's why your marriage story is so important. And oftentimes, that's the very first question they ask you at your interview. So, tell me, how did you meet? Very, very important factor in getting your marriage-based green card case approved. Tip number 2, don't be casual and don't be telling jokes. So, you would not believe how many couples I've seen act like goofballs in their immigration interviews. A lot of times we'll get recordings of interviews after. These are people that we didn't necessarily prepare ourselves for their interview, and they act like idiots. They're being all lovey-dovey, or they're cracking jokes, or they're interrupting the officer, trying to be the funny person in the room. Don't do that. Don't be casual. This is serious business, especially in the age of Trump. Do you think these officers who are listening to Trump telling them to deport as many people as possible want to hear your jokes? They don't. Now, I'll tell jokes at the interview because I'm funny. No, I'm just kidding. But I'll tell jokes at the interview just to lighten the mood if I think it's necessary. If something occurs to me that I know about the officer, having been with them many times, I might crack a joke just to try to keep things moving. But generally, you as the applicant or you as the beneficiary, you should not be telling jokes. Don't be casual. Be serious. Think of it like a job interview. This is very important stuff. If you keep joking, the officer's not going to take you seriously. And the number one tip that I can give you about how to succeed at your marriage-based green card interview, be honest. Be honest. It's always best to be honest. Now, you might get in a little bit of trouble for your honesty. Maybe you made a misrepresentation before. Maybe you snuck your way into the United States. Maybe you were in removal before. Maybe there's something that maybe even your spouse doesn't know. That would be bad, but you want to be honest. Now, if you're thinking before you go to your interview, if I'm honest, which Jim tells me is the number one important factor, I might not get my case approved and I need to be worried about this. I probably need to talk to an attorney about whether it makes sense to go to the interview, about whether this is going to make me inadmissible. Being honest is the most important thing. You can get denied for not being honest about something that wouldn't have caused you trouble. So let's say that you were applying for a marriage-based green card and you had worked without authorization. Now, when you marry a U.S. citizen, that work without authorization is forgiven. But if you lie about it, lie about your prior jobs, lie about getting paid under the table, those are real problems, and that can keep you from getting your green card. That can be a misrepresentation, require you to get a waiver, the whole 9 yards, and it's a big, big mess. So I suggest you always tell the truth, and if you're worried about the truth, that's when you talk to an attorney, and that's when you hurry up and get the attorney involved so that you can protect yourself and hopefully avoid deportation. So there you have it, 10 real tips from tons and tons of interviews. I hope you found it helpful. I hope it puts you in the best chance of success. Tell the truth, be concise, smile, be pleasant, be professional, and the truth will set you free. Have a great interview and best of luck to you. If you're looking to get started on the process or you need our help getting your case squared away, give us a call at 314-961-8200. Email us info@hackingimmigrationlaw.com. Be sure to join us in our Facebook group. It's a free immigrant home Facebook group. You can join us there and ask immigration questions all day long. People are talking about the immigration process in there. Speaking of asking questions, we have a YouTube channel with thousands of videos where you can learn all about the immigration process, learn about the errata sheet, learn about the marriage-based green card process, and we'd love to have you subscribe to that channel and to turn on alerts. We also have our Immigration Answers live show where you can come in and ask me a question for free. I do that 3 or 4 times a week for about an hour and a half. And then finally, if you're not following us on TikTok, you should. We have lots of fun on TikTok. That's at Immigration Hacking. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next video.